lot of us in our lives need a fresh start. And as you know, as veterans, we tend to screw our lives up a little bit. We tend to have problems. And it can be hard to kind of reinvent yourself getting out of the military because you have to figure out your identity. You have to figure out a new mission in life. And for a lot of veterans, I think moving abroad represents a fresh start in life, which a lot of times we need that. You need to go somewhere and kind of reinvent yourself, better yourself, work on yourself. And abroad, you kind of have true opportunity to do that. Whereas if you're in your current situation, it can be hard to kind of get a fresh start. If you're surrounded in your current environment, if you're with the people that you're always around, and moving abroad, I think is one thing, a fresh start for veterans. And the second thing, I think it's adventure. As veterans, we're adventurous people, or we wouldn't have joined the military to begin with. So the concept of having your life be an adventure is a part of the military journey. And moving abroad kind of keeps that adventure rolling.
Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. I'm your host, Hale, and this is Point of Impact. And what if the secret to finding your own mental and physical health wasn't in another pill? It was just getting out. And I'm not talking about out of the house or even out of town. What if it was getting out of the country? Today, we're talking to John H. Davis, a Marine Corps combat veteran, Harvard grad, and even has spoken to Congress as a legislative fellow for the Veterans of Foreign Wars, VFW. And he's also an advocate for veterans to become financially free, healthy, and he's also doing it through helping veterans live abroad. So before we get into it, I want to remind everybody that this is a great time to pause, hit that like button, give the show 5 stars, leave it a review, do all that great stuff that helps us reach a broader audience and bring awesome guests like John to more folks out there. And if you haven't already, get over to the Facebook group. The podcast has a place to meet and connect with other disruptors. They can give the show a little critique and maybe even suggest future guests. So get over to Facebook, Disruptor Nation. Now, without further ado, let's talk to John H. Davis. John, welcome to the show.
I'm fired up to be here, Aaron. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Well, I appreciate you letting me stumble through that introduction. I tell you what, I really appreciate. I've listened to a few episodes of you on other podcasts, and I've gone to the website and I've done, my diligence in, the internet snooping, stalking, and I got to tell you, this is a personal pleasure of mine to get you on the show because, well, I think of my overseas time when I was stationed in Italy as some of the best years of my life, and I'm always trying to get back over there. So first, let me ask you, how did you stumble upon this, or how did you discover this living abroad, the expatriating as a possibility?
It was kind of started with a vacation. And then a lot of us come on vacation and we kind of don't feel those symptoms that we feel in our normal lives. You sleep better, you eat better, you feel more relaxed. And then I thought, what if my life was a vacation? So when I came down to the Dominican Republic, I actually was pretty surprised to discover there was already a thriving veterans community here. So here in the Dominican Republic, where I live, we have 20 veterans that live here and experience a higher quality of life at a lower cost. A lot of people are really surprised when they're like, how do 20,000 American veterans live in the Dominican Republic? But there are veterans that are thriving all over the world. There are American Legion posts in Mexico. There are VFWs as far away as Thailand and the Philippines. And a lot of veterans are discovering that, hey, I can heal my mental health. I can live a higher quality of life, and I can enjoy myself abroad in ways you can't in the United States. And like you said, when you were abroad, those were some of the best years of your life. And that's why a lot of veterans are well suited to live abroad, because we live our military careers abroad. We're more likely to be stationed overseas. And then a lot of us get overseas and then we just kind of want to stay there. That's why you have a big veteran population in places like you were in Italy, in Germany, and places like even Japan, where a lot of Marines are stationed. So I started talking to veterans like, hey, maybe the cure to your issues, maybe the cure to PTSD is getting out of the country, experiencing a higher quality of life, and kind of pursuing your dreams outside of the country that we fought for.
Well, let's start with veterans here in the United States. Why do you think? Why do you think that's? Why do you think they're stuck here? Where they're resistant to considering moving out of the United States?
I think it's because America is the country that people move to, not the country that people move from. We kind of have that mentality as Americans. And then so many of us kind of get stuck inside of our comfort zones. But if you're a veteran, you're willing to get outside of your comfort zone. And I think that so many veterans are out there looking for something when you get out of the military. You're kind of, a lot of us come back to our hometowns and don't feel at home there. Like when I got out of the military, I went back to Iowa, where I'm from, and I can say that I feel more at home here in the Dominican Republic than I do in my hometown. Some of that is because of things like the rising cost of living in America. Like we can all agree that America has gotten far too expensive, and financial health is mental health. And when you're not worried about the bills every day, you can actually enjoy your life. I do things like I scuba dive, I surf, I play golf, and I do those things every week. Whereas in America, it's like you're constantly running around in the rat race. You're paying the bills and you're worried about the next thing. It's kind of like life in America has an endless to-do list. And I kind of found my way out of that. And now I'm trying to encourage other veterans that, hey, maybe a better life is abroad. And it's not something that I think every veteran is made to do. It's not something I encourage every veteran to do. But here in the Dominican Republic, I'm a part of a thriving veterans community. We have veteran events. We had a big veterans event last week. We have another one April 9th to help veterans explore the possibilities of living abroad.
Hmm. You know, I've got the associate friend, Jamie Gruber. So the host of he's I guess made himself the YouTube creator for expatriating to
He is,
uh,
yeah.
familiar with him. Yeah, I'd imagine so. But yeah, so it piqued my interest in moving to the Dominican Republic itself. But tell you what, I'm a bit of an Italophile. I lived in Italy, learned the language, and always trying to get back there. Anyways, uh, yeah, you're right. The cost of living in the United States is tough. What about though? Like you're talking about health and well-being, um, medical services. Is this something that's a concern when moving over?
Absolutely. Here in the Dominican Republic, we actually have veteran healthcare centers for veterans. So if you come here, I actually go to a veteran healthcare center for United States veterans. A lot of veterans are unaware that the foreign medical program of the Veterans Administration exists, and that's how veterans get their healthcare abroad. The first concern for a lot of veterans is, oh, do I lose my benefits if I move overseas? And the answer is no. I actually get better healthcare paid for by the Veterans Administration here in the Dominican Republic than I did in the United States. And I always tell people this story. Like when I got out of the Army, I was struggling, I was going through it, and I called the VA for a mental health appointment. And it took me 3 weeks to get in to see a doctor. Well, here, wait times don't exist in the Dominican Republic. If you want to see a doctor, you can see a doctor the next day. So we have these amazing veteran healthcare centers here in the Dominican Republic for American veterans, and they're staffed with Dominican doctors, Dominican staff, and they provide an excellent quality of care. Right now, the care is only for service connected veterans. So if you're service connected, they can treat any service connected stuff. But one of the cool things about the Dominican Republic and the rest of the world other than America is healthcare is actually incredibly cheap. So if I want top-notch healthcare where I can see a doctor as much as I want or whatever, if I'm not a veteran or not service connected, it only costs like $1,000 a year for that. Not to mention medications are incredibly cheap compared to the United States of America. So if I want a prescription or something like that,
Hmm.
stuff I can just get over the counter. You can just go to a pharmacy and buy the normal medications that we need, like blood pressure, diabetes, whatever kind of stuff that you're on. You can go and pick it up for pennies on the dollar compared to the United States. We all know the healthcare system in the United States isn't great, and it's not great for veterans. So I always surprise people when I say, listen, as a veteran, I get better healthcare in the Dominican Republic paid for by the Veterans Administration than I do in the United States of America.
I'm curious though about medications themselves. I know we are uh, doctors in the United States. It's almost as though your first, their first, uh, the first answer to just about anything is medication. Then
Yeah.
was it the second answer? More medication if that first one doesn't work. But uh, is that the same overseas, or why would it be healthier to, I guess, move to a foreign country?
And you're right. Veterans in the United States are over medicated and underhelped. And I always tell the story when I came here, I was on every anti-anxiety medication. I was on sleep medication. I was on depression medication and all the kind of pills that the VA throws at you. And you're absolutely right, Aaron. It's like if the first pill doesn't work, take two. If that doesn't work, take three. If that doesn't work, take four. And that's kind of the answer. But here I'm able to live a lot healthier in a lot of ways. And it's enabled me to totally get off of all the medication that I was on before I came to the Dominican Republic because I'm eating healthier food. I'm outside in the sun more. I'm swimming in the ocean. And also, I'm living a more stress free life. Americans are incredibly stressed. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have such a chronic disease epidemic, so much things like cancer. Where here in the Dominican Republic, we don't have those. In the United States, it seems like everyone has cancer or some serious health concerns. And here, people don't really have those because they're living outside in the sun. They're eating fresh fruit and vegetables every day and without the additives that are here. So veterans are surprised when they come here and they lose weight. Their stomach issues go away, their skin clears up. And it's this entirely different way of living that I'm trying to encourage more veterans to look into.
I was just thinking too. Yeah, the just the idea of taking siesta, riposo in Italian, uh, it actually it creates like a flash of anxiety just thinking about not working during prime working hours.
Right.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. The culture is different. Uh, I know just getting out and walking and the open air markets and fresh food. There's so many differences to the culture and down to what they eat and how they work is totally different than from the United States. It's really hard to find a farmer's market uh, around big cities. But let me tell you, let's back up a little bit about your time at Harvard. As a from your from your perspective as a Marine, did you see anything different? Did you bring in from your military service, from uh, the other students at Harvard? And then I also am curious about, yeah, there as far as veterans go, some of the qualities that military service uh, brings to gives the skills that are given to veterans are very handy in the workforce. Except there are also some things that are drawbacks, detriments. Okay, so let's say we're cracking the ice a bit on some of these diehard veterans, Americans in general, that it wouldn't even consider moving out of the United States to another country. Okay, where do they get started, and what are some of the destinations that are I guess friendliest to expats?
Yeah, I'd say if I was to talk about the best countries for veterans abroad, the Philippines is a big one, and the Philippines is the only location in the world with an actual Veterans Administration hospital abroad, and they speak English there, and you can rent an apartment for like $300-400 a month. So the Philippines has an incredibly high number of veterans there. And then Thailand is a great destination for veterans, also for some of the same reasons. The food is great, cost of living is cheap. And then Panama has a big veterans population, and Costa Rica has a great veterans population. They also have a great American Legion there. They have a Marine Corps League there. And then here in the Dominican Republic is a great spot. And some things do stop veterans from moving abroad. Things like families. People are like, I don't know if I want to move abroad with my family. I always tell people, listen, I'm a twice divorced veteran. I have no wife, no kids, no problems. So my life is a little bit different than other people's lives. And it is usually single male veterans that move abroad because you can take your military benefits, you can take your military retirement and live an incredibly high quality life in other countries. And a lot of veterans are kind of waking up to that fact as the cost of living rises in the United States, as we see kind of things like the mental health epidemic, as we see things like political division. And I think that some things do hold veterans back. It's funny, the thing I get the most is I can't take my guns abroad. So a lot of veterans aren't willing to give up their guns, and that's what stops a lot of them from moving abroad. But still, it's something that I'm helping veterans look into. And you mentioned the first step of moving abroad. And I would say the first step is to do a trial run, to go somewhere that you might want to go and stay there for like a month and see how you feel. Because the last thing you should do is just jump into it and you get in over your head or something like that. So I always tell veterans here in the Dominican Republic, come here, stay a month, explore the benefits, go get your health care set up and see how you feel. Because moving abroad isn't for everyone, and there are challenges to it. One of the challenges is something like isolation and mental health, because when you move to a new place and don't know anyone, obviously that can be difficult. And that's one reason why we're starting a thriving, collaborative, positive veterans community here in the Dominican Republic. And if veterans want to check it out, you can go to veteransinparadise.com, where we list our events abroad here in the Dominican Republic and send out a newsletter, connect veterans with things like real estate and all the things you need to do. You mentioned like Jamie Gruber earlier. He helps a lot of veterans and a lot of Americans open their eyes to possibility of life abroad. I started following him on Instagram as well. And I was like, hey, we had a nice conversation. Like my stuff is just for veterans, but he talks to families a lot, talks about international schools a lot, because I taught internationally, and my master's degree from Harvard is in international education. So I can say with a high degree of confidence that a lot of international schools provide better education than American public education.
After these messages, we'll be right back. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this episode, Extraordinary Delights, EODfudge.com. Extraordinary Delights is a disabled veteran, family-owned small business making handcrafted fudge and other sweet treats for the chocolate-loving patriots just like you. Go to EODfudge.com and check out some of our delicious flavors like triple threat chocolate with or without walnuts, mint dark chocolate, strawberry and creamy white chocolate, or my personal favorite, American Pick-Me-Up, an all-American version of tiramisu. While you're there, go to the apparel store and check out our awesome t-shirts, polos, and the baddest tactical apron on the market. You see me wear on the TikTok show, Aaron Hale's Cook Without Looking. So, right now, go over to EODfudge.com and pick out some fudge, other sweet treats for that patriot in your life with a sweet tooth. That's EODfudge.com. EODfudge.com. And now, back to the show. I had to stop and pop in my surprised bug-out eyes when you said there's a VA hospital in the Philippines. That's pretty cool. As well as the what was it? Americans in Foreign Wars, and that's pretty amazing. And not to mention just being these centers or the enclaves of expatriates in certain regions. So you're not totally alone. But also, yeah, like you said, there are some challenges. I know in my own research, you don't have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac overseas. So home ownership and borrowing in foreign countries is a little bit different. What about that? What about taxes? How's that work?
So here in Dominican Republic, as a foreigner, you have like full property rights, so you can buy and own property and homes without any issues. Other countries have different rules around it. I still pay American taxes. I'm still an American citizen. I don't have any dual citizenship or anything like that. Unfortunately, you cannot escape the IRS. No matter where you go in the world or how far you go, you still got to give, your money to Uncle Sam. But living abroad does come with some of those kind of concerns. And that's why I write on my blog for veterans moving abroad and kind of put that information out there so veterans can understand things like here's how your mailing address works, here's how banking works, here's how buying and renting abroad works, because there are extra challenges to it. But like I said, you still got to pay Uncle Sam unless you want to renounce your US citizenship, which obviously I would never do.
In which case, you would also lose your benefits.
Yeah. So
But then, okay, you make an income. If you decide to make an income in this foreign country, you still have to report that to the IRS. What about in your host country? Maybe paying two different taxes?
it depends how the income comes from. In some countries, they will double tax you. In most of the countries, not. So, like me, I work online, so all that is taxed in the United States from United States stuff, from my book sales, from Amazon, United States stuff. So you still kind of have that. Most military retirement and benefits are not taxed abroad. So here in the Dominican Republic, you wouldn't need to pay any of that to the Dominican government or worry about any of that type of stuff. So you'd be pretty good. And that's kind of one of the reasons why the Dominican Republic kind of stands alone as a really good country for veterans, is because the immigration stuff is very easy. Whereas in other countries, especially places like you mentioned, Italy, it can be more difficult to retire and move there. But now countries are opening up things like pension visas, where if you can demonstrate that you make, for example, 14 or $1,500 a month, then places like Costa Rica or Panama will grant you a pension visa, and you can go there and live there, forever, if you can prove that you're making $1,500 a month or more with your pension, with which most veterans are.
What about property taxes? How's that work?
So it's good you asked me that, because in the United States, like I remember when I owned a house in New York and I'm paying like $14,000 a year just in property taxes. And property taxes here in the Dominican Republic are incredibly cheap. You're going to pay a few $100s a year as opposed to thousands and thousands of dollars a year in the United States. I was looking at buying a place here in the Dominican Republic, and it was like very nice beach house. And that was kind of one of my first questions, was about the property taxes. And you can buy a house and your property taxes are going to be under like $500 a year, basically, no matter what kind of house you buy. So when I look at the United States, it's almost just like highway robbery when you have these like incredibly, incredibly high taxes. And here in Dominican Republic, like I said, pretty much no property taxes. And if there are, it's like $400 a year, which you don't even mind paying. That's the only tax you don't mind paying.
That's crazy. I mean, that's
Yeah, but
awesome.
that's how it should be. You own the goddamn house. Why am I paying $10,000 a year to live here?
All right, we're moving. Anyways, uh, so that's terrific. And you talked about these certain enclaves and the benefits of these places. Uh, what are there other benefits to, besides, the, I guess, the obvious cultural differences, the, healthcare system, taxes? What else draws you to moving overseas?
I think it's the concept of a fresh start. A lot of us in our lives need a fresh start. And as veterans, we tend to screw our lives up a little bit. We tend to have problems. And it can be hard to kind of reinvent yourself getting out of the military, because you have to figure out your identity. You have to figure out a new mission in life. And for a lot of veterans, I think moving abroad represents a fresh start in life, which a lot of times we need that. You need to go somewhere and kind of reinvent yourself, better yourself, work on yourself. And abroad, you kind of have true opportunity to do that. Whereas if you're in your current situation, it can be hard to kind of get a fresh start if you're surrounded in your current environment, if you're with the people that you're always around, and moving abroad, I think is one thing, a fresh start for veterans. And the second thing, I think it's adventure. As veterans, we're adventurous people, or we wouldn't have joined the military to begin with. So the concept of having your life be an adventure is a part of the military journey. And moving abroad kind of keeps that adventure rolling. I think if we're meant to be like 9 to 5 office people in cubicles, then we wouldn't have joined the military to begin with. So moving abroad kind of gives you a daily adventure, a daily fresh start. And I think that's something that's appealing to a lot of veterans.
Yeah, tell me more about the health effects. Uh, are there ways to kind of measure these changes? And besides the fact that you feel less stressed, or those, how have you seen the veterans affected by moving overseas?
Well, we can't ignore the fact, and I always talk about this, is listen, 20 veterans kill themselves every single day in the United States of America. So obviously, whatever we're doing as a Veterans Administration, as a country, as a people, is not working. So what I'm offering is a different way to look at the veteran healthcare system, to where it's like maybe if the government broke you, then the fix is elsewhere. So a lot of veterans that are moving abroad are one, experiencing less financial stress because you're not as concerned about the bills when you live a cheaper life. Two, you have the healthier food. And I think that's such a big kind of underrated thing that as Americans, I think we're finally starting to wake up to, that what you put in your body really, really matters. And I think it's the stress. America is very stressful. I mean, day to day life in America is something that really beats people down. I mean, when you come here, it's almost like you're aging backwards. Like I just turned 38 and I feel like I'm in the prime of my life because I can wake up every day and do my day how I want. I can engage in activities like scuba diving, playing golf, surfing. I think in America, we really kind of screwed up our kind of how we look at time because we all need a good balance between recreation, leisure, and work. In the United
Hmm.
States, it's like 80% work and like zero recreation or leisure. And here, like you mentioned earlier, taking a siesta, in the middle of the day seems like crazy for veterans because it's like, I need to work, work, work. And then you retire when you're 70 and you die. And that was your life. And moving abroad enables you to retire younger when you still have the health and the energy to do the things that you want to do. Like you can climb mountains, you can swim in the ocean. And I like to talk about, when my grandparents were like 90 years old, they took like a 6 month cruise around the world, which is such a cool thing. But they didn't even have the energy or health to like get off the boat and do fun stuff because they're 90. And so I want to enjoy my life while I still can, while I have the health, the energy, and the passion to live my life to the fullest and do the things I want to do. The idea of working every single day until I'm 70 and then dying the next year is incredibly unappealing to me. And I think for veterans, we're a different kind of people.
It reminded me of the quality of the food too. We eat so much processed food here. Uh, and I just remember my wife and I took a trip to Denmark, and I stayed on the bus, and she went into the 7-Eleven,
Hmm.
and it was so different in Denmark than you would find in the United States. No Slurpees and aisles full of jerky and potato chips. That was like one shelf, and then everything was fresh fruit and vegetables and fresh baked bread and stuff. It's like that's not the 7-Eleven I know. But it's totally different in other countries.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Americans don't really think about that as much as we should. I don't even have, like where I live in Dominican Republic, I don't have any fast food available to me. There's no fast food restaurants, and fast food culture and the convenience culture has just taken over the United States of America. And especially for veterans, we tend to be the most healthy and unhealthy people. I mean, I used to, drink a giant monster in the morning, put a dip in my lip and go on like a 12-mile ruck or something like that. And then when you get out of the military, it's easy to kind of continue those unhealthy habits. And moving abroad kind of forces you to be healthy because you're living outside more, you're in the sun more. There's a more community-based culture around food, not the fast food culture in the United States, where it's like you're eating in front of the TV or you're eating in the car. Like here in the Dominican Republic, people get together, they eat, they cook. It's a lot more fresh food without those additives in the United States.
Mhm. Are there any of those American conveniences that were hard to, I guess, wean yourself off of, or get used to not having?
I still get my Amazon packages delivered here to the Dominican Republic, so I'm free to get pretty much everything I want. And some stuff, is a little bit different. Like electronics here are very expensive. So if I want to buy a TV, there's extra taxes to it compared to the United States. But I always tell people, I still get my Amazon Prime. It just takes like 2 days more here in the Dominican Republic. So like there's a certain kind of oatmeal that I like in the morning, or if there's a certain kind of clothing brand I like, I can still get that sent here to the Dominican Republic. And that's partially because the proximity to the United States is really easy. But as a veteran, you kind of learn how little you need to be happy, I think. Like for me, I don't need much. I can walk to the beach. I can walk to a bar. I can walk to the gym. I can walk to the store. Like, what else do I need? I don't even own a car. I actually own a golf cart that I take and I drive it to the beach and I drive it to the store. And, you catch me with a beer and a cup holder and driving my golf cart around Dominican Republic, just living a great life.
I can have my groceries, just about everything delivered right to my house, and I never have to leave. I never have to go out the front door, which is so sad. But, but thankfully, I gave up television years ago. So, is there, before we start wrapping this up, is there anything else you think that we missed that we should cover on this topic?
I want to let veterans know that this option exists. And that's kind of why I started posting stuff on social media because when I got here, it really helped me in a lot of different areas of my life. And I think the first one was just my PTSD. Like coming here was like taking a magic pill where I didn't feel hyper alert all the time. I could relax, I could sleep through the night. And I wanted to share that message with other veterans. And I think not only moving abroad as an option, but also just traveling and experiencing life and being able to relax. So for me, I think when I talk to veterans about moving abroad, the first thing I say is listen, it's cheaper. And financial health is mental health. Two, American healthcare kind of sucks. Here, I get better healthcare as a veteran. Three, I want to be around other veterans. I want to have a fun veteran community. And we have that here in the Dominican Republic. So when I talk to veterans about moving abroad, I say, listen, if you want to live a better life at a lower cost, then moving abroad is an option. And not only that, health, happiness, peace. I mean, those things can be found other places than the United States. So I think that's what I'd like to tell veterans is, this option exists, like
Mhm.
as a resource. And I wrote a free guide to veterans moving abroad on my website. So if you want to read that, it goes over everything that you could possibly need to know about moving and living abroad, from taxes to healthcare to safety to mental health. Everything veterans need to know about moving abroad, you can find in this free guide on my website because I want to let more veterans know that this option exists.
That actually brought up another question for me. It was if if now that you've got somebody who's convinced they opened their mind to moving abroad,
Mhm.
maybe even picked out the location, the destination they want to move. Are there certain preparations they should do personally? A certain amount of passive income, a certain amount of savings that you would recommend first? How do they prepare personally and financially before they even consider moving somewhere else?
I think the financial preparation is the most important part because the last thing you want to do is like move abroad and run out of money. And that's why sometimes veterans are good candidates for moving abroad if you have your military benefits. Like if you did 20 years in the military and you have your VA compensation, you're going to be set for life pretty much any country that you go to outside the United States of America. So I do have a financial planning guide on my blog for veterans that kind of details the cost of living other places. You're always going to spend more money the first few months or like first year when you move abroad. before you kind of figure how things go. So you definitely need a little bit of money set up to begin with when it comes to moving abroad for the first time. I always recommend veterans, you want like 6 months of life expenses when you move abroad because you want to be able to do that. And now in today's world, more and more people work online. So you can work online from anywhere in the world. If you're working online and you're earning a salary, then why would you live in New York City when you could come down to the Dominican Republic and receive the same amount of money and live a far, far higher quality life?
Awesome. Well, John, I really appreciate the time. How about that website for anybody who wants to connect one more time?
Sure. My website is johnhdaviswriter.com. And I also have another website, veteransinparadise.com, which talks about events here in the Dominican Republic and stuff we do for veterans. So we are having our next veterans event in the Dominican Republic, April 9th, where we're going to have guest speakers, performances, raffles, and everything veterans need to know about moving abroad and coming here. So if veterans are interested in coming to the Dominican Republic, that's a good time to visit. And if you want to learn about moving abroad, you can always hit me up on social media, Instagram, TikTok, website. I always answer every email I get.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for your time. And folks, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share and hit that Facebook group up and connect with other disruptors in the Disruptor Nation. Until next time, prepare for impact.